The last section that we talked about was volumes, okay? And hopefully that was helpful for you, and we're going to get in today for using containers in your development environments. And I think this is actually one of the most compelling reasons for developer populace at large to learn containers. And that's actually why I put this in here. So we're going to go through two different scenarios. The first one, I'm going to show you how to use dev containers outside of Visual Studio Code, just because I know all of you don't use Visual Studio Code yet. I'm coming for you. So I'll show you how to do that first, and then after that, I'll show you how to do it with Visual Studio Code and how VS Code will actually make that really easy. And then lastly, we're going to go over networking before getting into multi-container projects. All right, so go ahead and let's go into using containers for your dev environment. That's what we're going to go into now. So we've kind of explored this idea of like it's really difficult when you start at a new company that like it's difficult to get up and running quickly at a new company, right? And so that's where dev containers can be very useful, right? It'd be useful if they could just hand you a Docker file and say, hey, here's what our developer environment is. If you just click start here, then everything just like spins up and starts working right away, right? That's pretty compelling, right? I remember at my one of the startups I worked at before I worked at Reddit, I had to like start up a developer environment, and it probably took me the better part of like 2 or 3 weeks just to get everything working, right? It had to be on a specific version of the JVM, and then it had to be like a specific version of NPM to get that version of Angular working. It was a Rube Goldberg machine of human suffering. Let's put it that way. So that's what I think containers in your dev environment can really solve for you. So obviously, I'm a JavaScript engineer. I don't know anything about Go, but we're going to be using Go here for a little bit just to prove the point that like you don't have to understand the inner machinations of how these things work. It can just work for you. Okay. So I imagine many of you have probably heard of Hugo. It's a very, very popular static site generator, comparable to like Gatsby or Jekyll or something like that. It's great. Lots of people use it. I think Front End Masters uses it on their website, right? Maybe.
Yes.
Oh, cool. See? So you've already used a Hugo website recently, or maybe currently, probably currently. That's cool, right? But I don't know how to set it up. I've never had to set it up for myself because I'm not a Go developer. I haven't necessarily messed around with it. But I'm going to show you just using containers that we can do all of this kind of ourselves. So let's say that you're joining this new team. It's a Hugo team, and your new project is here. So I have a link here, and it's going to link to a GitHub repo, which is on my GitHub. And we're going to set up this project together, despite the fact that many of you, I imagine, don't know how to use Hugo. Okay? So we're going to use this container here called Hugo Builder. And I don't know this person necessarily, but they created this container, Hugo Builder right here, that allows us to run Hugo inside of a container. And we're going to use bind mounts in a clever way to be able to build our project. Okay, so here, you probably won't see this, but apparently I have some Go vulnerabilities that I'm not going to fix because it's not a real project. Okay, and so here's the project. And what we're going to do now is we're going to run git clone right here. So just you can go ahead and copy that. And I'm here in my Intro to Containers project. If you look here, I have all the other projects in here. And I'm just going to say git clone GitHub BT Holt Hugo example. Okay, I'm going to go into Hugo example. And we're going to say docker run --rm -it -mount to use our bind mounts. I'm going to say type equals bind, comma, source equals $pwd like this so that we can get the current working directory. I'm going to say target equals /src. And then we're going to say -p 1313:1313 because that's the port that it's going to be listening on. -u Hugo, and then you have to put that the name here. So JGUYO like that /Hugo-builder. Again, you can totally just copy this right off of the notes as well. And then we're going to pin it to a specific version just to make sure this keeps working. So 0.55. So we've done everything so far. This is going to drop us into the container, and now we can give it a command for us to run. So the command that I want it to run is Hugo server, which is going to be like the development environment, right? Hugo server -w --bind equals 0.0.0.0. So the bind part is so that it's available externally, not just internally to the container. So now, hopefully, if we run this, mine's going to say can't find this, so it's going to go out there and pull some of these. Looks like it's going to be maybe 20 megabytes worth of stuff for me. And this already exists here. This is probably something like Ubuntu or Alpine that I already had on my computer, right? And here you go. Now it's running, and it's running on localhost 1313. So here is a Hugo website with some random theme. I don't even know what theme it is. Working, right? We got this all up and running with like a Go project with Hugo and all that kind of stuff running with no knowledge of it, like totally black box of how it's working internally. And if you're like a CSS developer or designer or something like that, you can just go in and mess with the CSS, and you don't have to really understand how Hugo is working under the hood. You can let the other team that handles that part of it just say, here's the Docker file. As long as you run the Docker file, everything just works, right? So I think this is compelling for teams and like for your personal projects, right? Like say you have some bespoke environment that you need to export with your project for it to work. You can just set all that stuff up, and then someone can come in and they just run the container and everything works. Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally what we do at Front-End Masters.
This is how it works?
We have Hugo and Go, and everything is in a container, and so you just build the container and start working.
There you go. This is now officially dubbed the Front-End Masters architecture. I think it's great. And like Hugo is a pretty simple example of this. Like I imagine most people here could set up Hugo on their own. Like I did make that project, right? So it didn't take me that long. But I'm sure you could imagine like some very difficult, maybe like JVM sort of thing that's difficult to set up, and all of those things could be combined into a container or multiple containers, and it makes it very easy to share. Do you have a question?
So with that approach, if I send somebody like the Docker version so they can run locally, is this also mitigating the need to install package? Like when you pull down a repo, like we just cloned this one, usually do a yarn or npm install. Do we bypass that just doing with the container route?
So I'm going to show you how to do this with VS Code here in just a second, and it'll take that even a step further. In general, it's good to have like fresh dependencies, right? Because things are constantly updating. And if like maybe if like I don't know, let's say Lodash releases a version that breaks and it's a patch version, you want to catch that in development, right? That's the there's trade-offs there that you need to make, I guess. So it can, right? You can totally bake everything into it. But what's cool about this, and coming kind of back to your point, if I come back in here and I look at my Go project here, Hugo example, and so if I come here, I think, anyway, I can't remember how you do this. But what's great about this is like, this is how not actually live editing, right? Because it's using a bind mount, it's shared with my host, right? So if I start typing things, it's going to be modifying the things that are in the container as well, right? So it can mitigate that, but you just have to make your decisions of how you want that to work. So actually coming back to the point of dependencies here, if I do an npm install on my local computer and then I bind mount that into Ubuntu to be run, we still have that issue of native dependencies, right? So if I build Node SAS for Mac and then I try and run it in Ubuntu, it's not going to work, right? Because it was built for Mac. So we have this kind of issue that we have to bind mount into the container and then afterwards run npm install, because it needs to be npm installed within the container. So you can burn them in, which is what you suggested, and that you just export the container with the dependencies already hard built in. But that kind of sucks a little bit, because if I run npm, like if I install another dependency afterwards, which is frequently what Node developers are doing, we have the same problem again. So there's a couple ways you can do it. If you're doing it this way without Visual Studio Code, the way that I usually do it is I just attach to the running container and I run npm install for the first time, and then after that it's usually okay, right? You just kind of have to do that every time that you restart up the container. It's annoying, but it works. And we're going to get into Visual Studio Code, which is just smart enough to say, like, I'm pretty sure you're going to need to do an npm install, and it just does it for you. So, but we'll get there in just a second.